The child whimpered beneath the torn thermal wrap. His small body curled against his mother's chest. Her arm trembled as she pulled him closer, shielding him from the bitter cold that crept in through every crack in the fracture escape pod. The atmosphere regulator had failed hours ago. Oxygen levels were falling. Heat was nearly gone. Her visor displayed red across every diagnostic metric. Critical, fatal, inevitable. Volatility pressed her forehead against Keyes. His fever was climbing. His pulse was erratic. The wound in his thigh had stopped bleeding, but the swelling was worse now. She had done everything she could. Used the field kit's last dose of antiseptic, cauterized the gash with the emergency heater, even synthesized an improvised salve from protein gel and metal flakes. None of it was enough. Her training had been in xenobotany, not trauma medicine, but she had tried. She whispered his name, but his eyes didn't open. His breath came in shallow gasps. She adjusted the pressure wrap around his ribs and prayed to a god her species had long abandoned. There was no food left. 2 water packs remained. The solar panels had cracked under meteor impact. The distress signal had pinged once, maybe twice, before the transmitter shorted out in a shower of sparks. She stared out through the cracked viewport. Endless black. One moon in the distance. No ships. No response. No hope. They were far beyond the reach of Cellari patrols. The pirates had made sure of that before throwing them from the cruiser like waste. She remembered their faces, the sneers, the laughter as they dragged her across the corridor, as her child screamed for her. They hadn't even bothered to loot her belongings. She was non-combatant. Cellari, a race known for their pacifism, their research, their cultural museums. That made her worthless to them. No ransom, no threat. She had begged. She remembered the sound of her own voice cracking, the blood in her mouth, the hiss of the airlock seal as they hurled her and key into the pod and fired it toward a dead rock. She remembered his little arms around her waist, trembling. She remembered every second. The pod's lights flickered. The temperature dropped another degree. She pulled Key closer and forced herself not to cry. Crying would dehydrate her. Crying would waste energy. Crying wouldn't save him. She had tried everything. Burned the last power cell to recharge the medical scanner. Rigged the beacon to broadcast on old sublight frequencies. It was madness, hoping anyone used those anymore. But she had to try. She had told him stories. Even now, her voice rasped the old tales. Myths, legends. There had been a species, long ago, that roamed the stars not to conquer, but to protect. A people born from a death world so violent that even their plants were dangerous. A race that burned brighter, fiercer, because they had no other choice. Some claimed they had gone extinct. Others said they had withdrawn, disgusted by the galaxy's cruelty. She didn't know what she believed. Key had loved those stories. He always asked for the one about the human who walked into a war and stopped it with words and a plasma rifle. She told again, softly, her voice a whisper through cracked lips. When her voice failed, she stared into the black and waited for the end. Far away, across 3 systems and plasma belt, a human ship caught the fragment of her signal. It was buried in radiation noise, less than a pulse. An echo. Lieutenant Reyes tapped the screen and squinted at the waveform. The AI flagged it as debris noise, but Reyes had a habit of not trusting AIs. He ran a manual filter, isolated the signal, cleaned it up. His eyes widened. Human words, mixed with alien syntax. Emergency frequency. Possible life signs. He patched it to Commander Rivas. The command deck was quiet. Rivas listened to the playback. He didn't blink. Location. Reyes pulled the coordinates. Outside any major routes. No known installations. Closest patrol ship is 2 weeks out. Rivas stared at the stars on the screen. Anything in our orders preventing us from checking it out? No, sir, but we'd be delaying the return leg. Supplies are tight. Rivas nodded once. Plot a jump. Tell engineering to prep the cryo sickbay. If there's someone alive out there, we're going to get them. The jump took 11 hours. The human vessel, Aegis Dawn, wasn't a warship, but she was fast, and her crew was built from volunteers who had learned one thing from Earth's history. You never ignore a call for help. Volati barely noticed a tremor in the ground. Her skin was ice. Her breath was shallow. She had given the last water to Key and now felt her organs tightening. Her vision blurred. Then came the sound. A deep, humming thrum. Not the screech of pirates. Not the hiss of a sandstorm. A low-frequency vibration, steady and controlled. It grew louder, closer. Her eyes fluttered. She thought she was hallucinating. The wall split open. Light flooded the pod. Tall figures entered. Massive shapes in matte black exosuits, their visors glowing with HUD overlays. One scanned the room. Another knelt beside her. Gentle hands. A hiss of oxygen flooding from a pressurizer. 2 survivors. Said a voice through a translator. Initiate triage. Volati gasped and coughed, then blacked out. Key was already on a stretcher. Stabilizing gel applied, vitals connected. Medics moved fast. The pod's data logs were pulled, atmospheric samples scanned. One of the suits turned to Rivas. Frostbite, internal bleeding, blood loss. They won't make it unless we act now. Do it, Rivas ordered. Run emergency protocols. Full support. Inside the medical bay, Dr. Chin worked nonstop. Volati's biology was unlike any Earth-born species, but the humans had long developed adaptive medicine. Synthetic proteins adjusted to foreign DNA. Cellular analysis was near instant. They built treatment algorithms on the fly. 2 nurses monitored vitals. Another translated neural spikes to estimate pain levels. Key's leg was treated first. Infection neutralized. Musculature regenerated using nanorap. Sedation applied, oxygen optimized. He stabilized. Volati required blood filtration, lung support, and neural stimulation. The system adapted with precision. By hour 12, she began to breathe on her own again. When she woke, she thought she was in a dream. The walls were white, clean, quiet. The bed was soft. Her limbs no longer screamed. Tubes ran from her arm to a glowing med pump. A human sat in the corner. Asian features, sharp eyes, a voice like wind over water. Dr. Chun, you're safe, she said gently. You're on a human vessel. Your child is alive. Volati tried to speak. Her throat burned. Chun handed her a cup with a straw. Don't rush. You've been unconscious for almost 2 days. But we stabilized you both. The fever broke yesterday. He asked about you. Volati closed her eyes and wept. Later, she saw them. Humans, walking without fear, joking in a language she barely understood. One of them had eyes the color of lightning. Another moved like a machine, all precision and balance. They wore casual clothes, but she had seen their armor. She had seen the black suits lined up in the corridor, motionless and terrible. She asked why they had come, why they had risked the jump, expended supplies, saved strangers. Key's laughter echoed faintly down the corridor, a sound both out of place and deeply welcome in the reinforced halls of Aegis Dawn. Volati walked beside Dr. Chin, each of her steps steadier than the last. Her body was still recovering, but her mind had adjusted more quickly. She had spent her life cataloging plant life on distant moons, reading linguistic structures, studying other civilizations from behind embassy windows. But she had never been among humans before. Not truly. Now she lived among them. Dr. Chin gestured to the diagnostics display. Your nutrient levels are stabilizing. We've adapted the menu cycle to your physiology. No more nausea. Volati nodded, eyes lingering on the translucent chart. I was prepared to die out there. I made peace with it. You gave me back a future I didn't expect. Chin gave a tired smile. We do that a lot. Comes with the territory. What territory is that? Volati asked. Chin didn't answer immediately. Instead, she guided her toward the auxiliary briefing chamber. You should see this. Inside, Commander Rivas stood before a projection of a system map. Red flares indicated pirate activity. A cluster of green dots showed known patrol routes of the Cellari Union. Between them, a jagged void, uncharted, lawless, and dangerous. That was where her escape pod had landed. That was where the signal had barely gotten through. Rivas turned. Volati, we just got news. She stiffened. half expecting something grim. The cruiser you were taken from, the Soul Car, was destroyed, tracked by a pirate group operating out of Theta Rho. Intelligence says they stripped it and sold survivors into labor. A few tried to escape. None made it. She felt a cold pressure in her chest. They left us to die. They did worse. You and your son were thrown into space because the pirates saw no value in you. That tells us something. Volati looked up. That we were worthless. Rivas shook his head. That someone did want records of you existing. Pirates don't waste potential hostages unless they've been paid to. Quietly, her eyes narrowed. Who? That's what we intend to find out. The crew had already begun piecing together fragments from the escape pod's memory logs. Volati, while disoriented during the assault, had retained a vivid memory of one voice, harsh, clipped, speaking in a dialect far too precise for a common raider. They isolated the voice. Audio match came back flagged. Confirmed mercenary, once contracted by a powerful trade syndicate, now heavily involved in frontier politics. Keys drawing hung near the command deck. Above it, new data scrolled by. Names, coordinates, ship manifests. The humans didn't operate like Cellari authorities, who deliberated and investigated for months. They moved quietly, efficiently, purposefully. Rivas assembled a small team, recon-focused, equipped with stealth inserts and neural encryption. Volati observed their planning from a corner of the chamber, noting how quickly they adapted. Tactics updated mid-sentence, loadouts optimized for scenario, contingencies predicted across multiple failure trees. These weren't just soldiers. They were strategists, survivors of a world that never gave second chances. She approached him after the briefing. You're going after them? Rivas nodded. We can't let this stand. The fact they thought no one would care is what bothers me the most. I want to go. He hesitated. That's not an option. I can identify the dialect, possibly even their cultural lexicon. If it's a trade syndicate, I've studied their commerce language for years. I know how they hide transactions. I can help. He studied her, weighing the risk. This isn't a scientific outpost. This will be a confrontation. I was discarded, she said, voice firm. I won't be discarded again. Key stayed on board under protection of Chun and the AI caretaker, who had already adapted to his patterns, creating safe play environments, simulating educational experiences, even replicating fragments of Cellari lullabies through harmonized soundscapes. Volati joined the team on the recon vessel Horizon Mark, a sleek, silent strike craft optimized for deep infiltration. As they jumped into the Theta Rho system, she sat in silence across from Ramirez, the weapons specialist who cleaned his railgun as casually as someone sharpening kitchen tools. You scared? He asked without looking up. No. He smiled faintly. Then you're either brave or lying. I've been dead before. Everything now is a second life. He paused, then nodded once. Good answer. The target was a shadow port orbiting a broken planet, barely held together by magnetic tethers. Illegal traffic moved through at all hours. No manifest, no law. The humans docked quietly, their signatures masked as a trade courier from a dead colony. The crew disembarked, dressed in local garb, weapons concealed but ready. Volati walked among filth and smoke. She kept her head low, but her eyes open. The crowd was a mix of species, rough, desperate, dangerous. But her mind focused on patterns, dialects, tonal variants. Then she heard it. A clipped accent, exact modulation. The voice. She nudged Rivas. North Corridor. Black coat. That's him. The team split seamlessly. Two circled wide. Rivas followed casually. The man in the coat moved fast, ducking into a side passage. He reached for his comms. Too late. Ramirez had already blocked the exit. One swift move, and the man was down, paralyzed by a neural spike dart. They extracted him in under 2 minutes. In the ship's hold, he woke chained to an anchor harness. The human interrogator leaned in, calm, detached. We don't want your money. We want the name of the buyer. The prisoner sneered. You think you scare me? The interrogator didn't blink. We know you were paid to clean your records. You dumped a Cellari woman, and her child into space. That's attempted murder. No one cares about Cellari trash. The air went silent. The interrogator leaned closer. We do. A surge of electricity arced across the man's synapses. Neural interrogation wasn't torture. It was worse. It made the brain relive every betrayal, every failure, amplifying guilt and regret. He broke in under 3 hours. The buyer was a Cellari executive, high rank, connected to a faction trying to align Cellari neutrality with the trade syndicate. Volity had been a threat. She had uncovered sensitive anomalies during her xenobotanical research, evidence of synthetic bioweapons grown on supposed neutral colonies. Key's presence was an unfortunate liability. They wanted to silence you, Rivas said grimly, and thought no one would notice. She nodded slowly. I was just a researcher. I didn't understand what I found, but it must have scared them. They returned to Aegis Dawn. Key ran to her, clinging tightly, unaware of how close he had come to being permanently orphaned. Back aboard, the crew began uploading data to human intelligence networks. The information would be sent to the Cellari opposition factions quietly, untraceably. Let the civil disruption unfold from within. No bullets, just truth. One evening, as the stars spun slowly outside the viewport, Volity asked Rivas a question that had haunted her since they met. Why do you care? About us. About justice for people you didn't know.